This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Wednesday, April 10th, 2024. And my guest is the awesome JC Bagnell. Hi, Juan Carlos. How are you?
Hey, Miriam. I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on. We got some really cool stuff to talk about. I'm stoked.
I know, I'm excited. I know it's a little early this week, folks. I'm doing Wednesday, and usually I don't do this early, but I'm traveling the rest of the week, and it's going to be really difficult to get a guest squeezed in. So thanks, JC, for doing it early with me. And we'll obviously catch up on all the other news next week. But, look, it's just like it's been 4 days since the last podcast, technically. So there are news, and we'll get into that. But you've done some cool videos lately that I want to kind of dive into because, look, I love your work. You know that. So don't be so modest. But the bottom line is we're talking about a couple of phones that both you and I have been playing with that I think are not they're not really being covered very well, primarily because one of them has been unseated by its more exciting brother or sibling.
Yeah, the bigger
and then
brother.
The other one is just, it's a Vivo and it's not an X series. And people just don't even know that Vivo makes other phones than the X series, at least, right. Those of us here in the West that follow, the few of us who follow Vivo in the West, which is tech people and my audience and your audience, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we've got them all roped up between our two channels. Like it's all of them. There's dozens of us.
Yeah. But the first thing I want to start with really is talking about Snapdragon X Elite.
Yeah.
There
really
is
exciting stuff.
Yeah. So Qualcomm had a thing recently. I think they invited mostly creators, and I'm a podcaster, so I don't know. They don't know where to fit me in as usual. And so no biggie. But I did get to play with it, to run the benchmarks at the summit in Hawaii last year. So, I've been a huge proponent of ARM PCs from the get-go. When the 12-inch MacBook Air came out, the small, light one, single port, a lot of people don't like that MacBook because the performance, Intel Pentium M, basically, right? Fanless. The bottom line is the form factor was perfect. The chip just couldn't keep up. But I used it as my main travel computer for about 5 years. And you're going to say, well, are you a masochist or how did you make it work, right?
Well, but don't you find that that's a major part of the laptop conversation that I think our PC junkies can handle a little bit better? There's a little bit more room for picking the right tool for the right job, where when we talk about phones, it's like this one-size-fits-all communication appliance that a lot of the phone junkies kind of fall into that trap. Whatever works best for me must be the best for everyone else too. But it's interesting seeing Apple manage that transition from Intel to their own ARM architecture. And now we're hoping that we'll see that same kind of leapfrogging of performance per watt. That doesn't mean you're going to immediately get the mostest, awesomest workstation gaming laptops or the craziest form factors, but it means we have a competitive chip that now we can run against different tiers of MacBooks.
Exactly. So I'm bringing it up because this MacBook 12, because to me, this is the subject of this conversation. It's the light and thin portability computer.
Yeah.
The Ultrabook, as it were, the MacBook Air, but non-Mac, like Windows. And that MacBook at the time to me was the moment that came out, I've understood a long time ago, and I think it's because very early on, because I'm older, so in the 80s and 90s, I saw the ascendance of ARM. I saw the BBC Micro from in the 80s. That was essentially like one of those Commodore 64-like computers. That was the first with a RISC ARM chip, and I saw that evolve, and I saw it take over the Scion organizers and all those PDAs. And at the time, I was
and until the X Scale series too,
exactly,
was so high.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I cannot believe to this day why Intel dropped X Scale and sold it off. That was a strategic mistake. They went all in on
Huge
x86,
blunder.
and I don't know why. And look at them now; they still don't want to do ARM chips. I mean, they actually do. They put ARM chips in their flash controllers. In their Thunderbolt interfaces and stuff. It's hilarious. But the reality is this, right? you look at this MacBook and you look at the way we evolved with the Ultrabook and the Intel side,
Hmm.
we had, and even Apple until the M chips, there was this vacuum for this
Yeah.
performance enough, super long battery life, super light, super thin, super portable computer.
Well,
And when I
and
saw
I
that
feel
12
like
inch, I was like, this with ARM, because I understood what ARM could,
yes.
and of course we all understand ARM because the iPhones, smartphones, everything. But the reality is ARM is the most, like, there are more ARM chips in the world than there are people by something like 100 to 1 or something.
I know.
Like, there are way more ARM chips out there in the world than there are Intel chips by a long, 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 long shot.
Right.
So it's ARM rules the world. So it's inevitable that somebody sometime along the way would come up with a viable, I'm saying this is a key word, and I think Apple
For sure.
waited till they could develop their own chips with the M series, a viable alternative to Intel's x86 architecture. And I think Snapdragon, Qualcomm, they tried to kind of like do it multiple times. Like, I went to Computex in before COVID, and they had
Yeah.
the early versions of the Snapdragon 8CX, 7CX, etc., and it didn't quite deliver. And I
Well,
think part of it is because Microsoft wasn't behind it, right?
yeah. So Microsoft has been again. We don't have the same kind of vertical, right? When Apple thinks they're ready, you've got hardware, you've got chip
Right.
design, and you've got
They
software all
control
in
it
one
all.
column.
Mhm.
And this is definitely going to be one of even into X Elite. This is still going to be one of the challenges we need to watch in the market, where we've got Qualcomm. I think Qualcomm's done their job, at least from what I've seen.
Oh,
And
I
we can
agree.
talk about specifics there. Now we need to see that Microsoft is continuing to iterate and improve on the emulation layers in Windows on ARM. And then we need to see what systems OEMs build around this chip. And that's going to have a huge impact on the consumer performance. It's not just, I've got a powerful chip. It's how do you support it? How do you power it? And what is the configuration that you're looking to achieve at a certain price? I actually think 8CX, especially the 8CX Gen 3 that we saw in the Surface Pro 9 and in the Robo Ancala, and I think there was a Lenovo, a laptop that had it too. It was actually a really good chip. It just went into computer configurations that were significantly more expensive than that performance tier. 8CX Gen 3 was kind of a really good Core i3 at a much better performance per watt.
100%.
And that should have gone into Core i3 affordable systems right there.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned that, because at the time that the Microsoft Surface Pro X came out, I was still running my MacBook 12, I think. And when I put them side by side, they were both slower-ish, but manageable.
Yeah.
The thing is, I learned to use my MacBook 12-inch with its deficiencies. Basically, as
For
long as I
sure.
didn't open more than 10 tabs, I was fine. I could, but I
Right?
could edit video at 1080p, no problem.
Yeah.
Even 4K if I didn't do something too crazy. It wasn't unusable. I had a high spec version too. It's just that it would peter down if you tried to do, and like my video compared to some of you creators, I don't have LUTs. I don't have, color corrections of any kind. I do not have
For
anything
sure.
fancy going on, right? So I think
Because I'm
keep
trying to
that-
work more mobile. I'm trying to
yeah,
minimize
same
all of
with
that
me.
too.
And I feel
So,
I
yeah.
know a lot of creators, especially on TikTok and stuff, they do everything on their phone, right? So like
Yeah.
the reality for me is it was usable, but the M series really unlocked me being universally able to compute everywhere. But my Surface Pro X was fine to me. The biggest obstacle was not the hardware or the performance so much, because I was used to scaling my usage down for it, but it was the apps. Like, I couldn't run anything. Even Chrome only just now came out native for Snapdragon, right?
Isn't
on
this
Windows.
always the catastrophic Microsoft blunder, right? It's only second to never get into a land war in Asia. It's like Microsoft has had to have seen over Windows RT, over Windows Phone, over previous generations of Windows 8 to Windows 10. Like, Google is going to be obstinate, right? So many people are using Chrome. It's going to load on this underpowered machine. Google wants to have control over that, and they've never released the sort of better experience. But
Right.
especially as we were getting to the refreshes, the second and third generation of the 8CX, one of the things that I think Microsoft did really well was Linux compatibility.
Right.
And even though these machines are underpowered for the price, if you fire up Ubuntu inside Windows 11, you got much better performance than comparable. Like GIMP for me is one of those I love.
Yeah.
I still do most of my work and thumbnails with GIMP. GIMP in Linux in Windows 11 is faster and is a better performer than GIMP natively in Windows 11. And that kind of flexibility helped open up a lot of this. But really what we need to see is more performance. And that way, that emulation layer, people don't notice those performance deficits when they load up legacy software.
And that's what one of the areas where Apple, being so vertically integrated,
really
were able to do it so right from the get-go, where everything worked. All my 64-bit apps for Intel on my Mac just worked. Like, I didn't have to do it. It was incredible. And some of them worked faster than on my i5 iMac with the M1. Sure. When I first got the M1, I was like, are you kidding me? This is faster running emulated on my laptop that I just bought. Wow.
Dollar for dollar, you can run Windows on ARM on a MacBook and it will outperform an 8CX Gen 3. Right. So dollar for dollar, the MacBook is a better way to run Windows when you're looking at this ARM performance. But yeah, X Elite really does seem like it's going to help shake this up.
And I'm excited about that. See, for me, that's the thing. It's like, I believed in ARM all along. It was just missing, it finally came for Apple, even though Apple, if you're listening, I know they're not listening to me, but if you are, like, I want that 12-inch MacBook back with an M3 chip, presto. Like, just kill the butterfly keyboard and give me a real.
They want you to use an iPad, but I want to see the even smaller, proper
everybody
laptop.
I know who's had that Mac 12-inch that is in our communities of more tech savvy people and has loved it even with its flaws and has wanted a new one with ARM. And please, please, please. And then the other thing is, as you said, Snapdragon X Elite. Now, this is the beauty of it. I'm really hoping. I know Microsoft is kind of caught between a rock and a hard place because they can certainly do the emulation. I trust that they can do this right. They have their dev technical chops to do that. It's just a matter of having the momentum. And to get the momentum, they need the devices. And what I'm worried about more than Microsoft is, and Qualcomm's totally, I'm not worried about them. They're going to nail this.
I think they've done their job, for sure.
But what I'm worried about is the OEMs, because they are caught between, hey, we've got this Intel rubbing our back, giving us free massages on the cruise boat. and then we have, Qualcomm trying to do the same, but, their masseuses don't have quite the same level of experience. And I'm not really feeling those hot rocks on my back as much, Like, I hate to say that, but like, I'm more worried about, and this is why I was so excited about Surface X, because I'm like, finally, they're just making a thing for that thing, right? It's not like we're just doing something else. It's like, we already have another Surface running Intel. You can buy that one, but now we're getting serious, and this is us, right? So I want somebody more insolent than the Dell, HPs, and maybe Lenovo, or I think
Lenovo was the first I turned
or
to.
Asus or whatever. We had this debate last week about Asus versus Asus.
So I'm with you. I feel like Lenovo has also taken sort of a top position as one of the more dramatic. They love to tinker with form factors. They love to build
the Yoga Book 9i, the dual display. I love that thing. Give me that as an ARM, because Intel is okay on that, but.
Lenovo gave us the Surface Neo that Microsoft wouldn't give us. I mean, again, that is the company I'm looking to most to see what they do in a disruptive way. But I think the first batch of X Elite, I'll be curious to see if OEMs start stepping on each other's toes. I kind of expect Samsung to come out with the biggest multimedia OLED, the more expensive
throw everything
tier.
But the kitchen sink ultra device.
I kind of hope Lenovo kind of comes in with a Yoga and a ThinkPad, like a business grade version of this idea. Again, Microsoft is gonna put this in a Surface laptop and in a Surface Pro. So I don't think we're gonna see immediately a rush to try and compete against Surface Pro, like tablet detachables.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see. I don't think we're gonna get multiple solutions from each OEM. I'm hoping each OEM kind of sticks to their lane of what is their signature flavor of X Elite. And that, so unfortunately, it means we'll have a little less competition for each form factor, but we don't have companies trying to confuse, because this is going to be a really confusing transition for a lot of consumers. And I don't trust the OEMs to properly educate their customers as to why this is a different kind of system.
And I also don't think the enterprises even though long term there's a lot of opportunity there because road warriors,
Yeah.
traveling salespeople,
Or like,
but
think about a car rental place. Like they're always walking around with tablets and data connected devices.
but their IT departments are slow to change, and they also have a lot
Mhm.
of legacy apps that need to be emulated that are 32-bit apps, and that's a problem, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so my point is, though, I think that this is why, like, when I hear yoga and Lenovo, like, I
Mhm.
literally hear Snapdragon Elite. Like, that's all I
Yeah.
hear ringing in my ears. Like
Same.
when I look at when I hear Surface, like, I'm like, forget an Intel Surface at this point. Like, you
Yep.
should be all in on ARM. And I don't know. I'm super gung ho about this, and my experience so far with it has been really impeccable. And I know from a technical point of view, I'm not worried. It's just like you said, it's marketing, distribution,
Yeah.
OEMs. I'm not even worried about Microsoft because I think they've learned from the previous mistakes, including Surface Pro X and other things where they didn't have the emulation, they didn't have the support, they didn't have enough app momentum. I think that can change.
I think they saw like Apple's position in the market, and I think they completely underestimated the pushback for previous experiments like Windows X and Windows RT, and
Oh
like
yeah.
there were some good ideas in the Windows 8 days that with some consistency of approach, we might have seen a different outcome or a faster path to where we are now. But I was way too early also. I was at Newegg probably about 3 years before M series chips came out, talking about like, well, guys, look at how powerful our phone chips are. Imagine if you just put a phone chip with
And then,
active cooling into a laptop, that would be great. And then
There's a
all those
whole-
nerds were like, no way, x86 is going to rule forever.
Then there's a whole kind of tangent to be had here. We're not going to go there, but we could about
No.
the whole using your phone as a desktop, like the whole DeX,
Yeah.
Motorola.
Well, and I don't want to divert too much, but have
Ready
you fired
for
up Pixels, the 50
Yeah,
Android
yeah.
15
There is
developer
that
preview?
rumor floating around that the Pixel
So it
on
got
Android
better.
15.
It did get better. It's still
yeah.
not ready for anyone to use it mainline, but this is an encouraging step in the right direction. So really, the main thing that I would point out, and
Yeah.
especially for your audience, because I know they are savvier than the average bears, they actually do like to kind of dig into the nuts and bolts and the performance and stuff like that. I am very anxious about how even techies are talking about X Elite in terms of power. Because this
Right.
is the one thing I've tagged Qualcomm on, is we don't have a good understanding of how much power the chip actually draws.
Right. They always talk about the whole package, which I
The whole
understand
system,
holistically it makes sense. But our nerds, right? Our nerdy selves are like TPD guys, right?
Yeah.
And I agree. But I also think there's another issue, right? And I think the other issue is that we have two parallel streams of early adopter tech savvy folks. You and I are kind of straddle both, but I think that my audience is definitely in the first stream. And the first stream is ultra portability, ultra performance. To them means
Same.
battery life, means getting on the road forever and being connected forever. And yes, you don't want to sacrifice too much speed performance for that.
For sure.
And the second stream, which is I think a big stream and a very vocal stream, and I don't hate them for it, is the gamers, like the people who are like, I will carry a 2-inch thick brick that weighs 14 pounds, and
with a power supply that weighs even more.
Yes, as long as I can get my RTX 4090 desktop chip in there, and my power supply is 250 watt and the size of an Xbox 360.
Man,
brick,
the last
right?
Core i9 I got to tool around with had that massive brick of a power supply, and at full tilt, I think it had an RTX 4080 in it. At full tilt with a Core i9 and a 4080, it was still depleting battery while it was plugged in while rendering video. And those fans were cranking. So I totally appreciate the audience of people that want a portable desktop. But that's why we need to be so on top of making sure consumers find the right fit for their needs. And I think like your first tier of audience, so many more people have way more compute power than they need. Yeah. And they're going to care more about how long they can run it out in the field. So when Qualcomm says the entire reference laptop operates at 24 watts, and that's what they're saying is the peak system thermal design, that to me is incredibly exciting because that's a step better performance per watt than what we see in an M3. Maybe not an
Right.
M3 Pro. We don't have
Yeah,
the data
I mean-
to compare like that.
And it's
But
not a
what-
competition, guys. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I just want everybody
Well,
to
it
have
is.
long. Well, I'm just saying. No, I mean, at that point, like, we're. It's so,
Oh, yeah.
you know, like I'm
No,
just
this
saying,
is
like,
good
I want
stuff.
everyone to enjoy the 18 hours of battery life. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like I no longer have to carry a power brick half the time with my MacBook.
Well,
Like, it's
this opens up
it's a done
the
deal.
exciting. This opens up the exciting potential, though, where I can't quite pull this off with Core i7 or Ultra 7 Intel machines anymore. But if Qualcomm is accurate and we get OEMs that are putting out systems that total system is under 30 watts, that's a portable power bank.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't need a lot to top that off to charge that up out in the field.
JC,
And you
I've
might
been
not even.
living off a 65 watt PD
Yeah.
compatible power bank on my MacBooks, actually since my
Now-
12-inch even, because
Now
it
take that
worked.
down where you don't even need the 65 watt.
You need 30
can
watts.
easily-
I know.
So that's to me is like if you're not critically anxiously excited about that kind of potential, then we're definitely speaking different camps. And it's okay to want your super awesome beefy creator gaming laptop workstation portable desktop, but what I am salivating over is the idea that a small portable battery and a super ultra light machine is going to start cranking Core i7 numbers on battery power. Not that I need to plug it in to get the full performance of that Intel system. I can run it for a day of heavy creator work and then charge it up out in the field on a small power bank. That to me is I didn't think we'd get here. I was worried we'd never get
honestly,
here in Windows
I went from
land.
M1 to M2. I haven't upgraded to M3 yet. I don't think I will. But the point is, I've been living that life, and it's amazing.
Yeah,
when
it's
you
great.
know that your phone charger can charge your laptop, that your phone brick, your little battery USB bank can charge your laptop. It's a
Yeah.
game changer.
It's huge.
And the other thing is your laptop also becomes a power brick, right? Like I use my MacBook to charge other devices all the time in the field, right?
And you've got the room. You're not so precious about how much
I'm like,
power.
meh,
For
that's
sure.
fine, And then the other thing I think you need to just briefly mention before we move on to phones is that
For
I
sure.
think that the other thing is the second stream of people, the gamers, the hardcore desktop on the go people.
Mhm.
The reckoning is coming for you too with ARM. That's the thing you have to understand. ARM will scale up to meet your needs
Yeah.
and deliver better TPD and better battery life.
You know what has been encouraging about that? Because I did get a lot of criticism on my X Elite video because it's not
Really?
it's not a scientific benchmarking. It's not a Gamers
Oh.
Nexus video.
That's been out there for a while now, the benchmarks. They haven't changed.
sure.
We know what they are.
But there's that kind of crew of people, they want you to read the bar graphs to them and they want to know that there's like no
Fair.
editorial compromise. And I had to disclose, like Qualcomm paid for my train ticket to go down to San Diego. Like that's the kind of stuff that
Ooh, a
happens
train
in this.
ticket.
Yeah, I know, right? It was, I'm really living it up there. Actually, business class on the train was nice though. But
I bet it was.
the thing that I found encouraging is in the gamer camp, we've recently seen the split between people who want performance at any energy cost and this new aggressive crew of people that are into these portable consoles, Steam Decks and Claws and Lenovo's. And so while the hardcore like system builders were kind of critical of X Elite, immediately I saw from like the Steam Deck junkies, holy cow. If we could start getting Core i7 style performance and even beefier GPU performance in something like a handheld, the total TDP of a Steam Deck with everything cranking at max is around 20 to 25 watts. And if you can get that in a fanless design off of X Elite, I think we're actually primed for a significant shift in gaming performance and developers supporting ARM outside of Nintendo, because obviously Nintendo has already learned this lesson.
Right.
They use Tegras. So this is like, yet again, if you're a gamer and you're like me, I love my Steam Deck. I really wish I could shut up my Steam Deck fan.
Well, so you all know I'm an Android user, but I'm going to be controversial here and say that, you can have all this today, right now, all of what you just said. It's called Steam on your iPhone. Look, I'm sorry, but like we've when you look at iPhone game performance, like I'm not a gamer and I have an iPhone for creative purposes, but it's not by far not my main phone. It's in a bag in my bag without a SIM card in it most of the time because I've got the Canadian one with a SIM tray. Oh yeah.
Ooh,
anyway,
fancy.
The point is that I mean, I get it. Like you're looking at a different experience, the handheld, but you can kind of get there. And that proves to me that ARM can get there.
Oh yeah,
with a Windows OS on top of it.
I gotta say,
iOS.
like the change that we've seen this year in Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 and Dimensity 9300, we already have laptop powerful chips in our pockets that are operating between 10 and 15 watts.
Yeah.
I've changed my gaming I don't do a lot of in-depth gaming benchmarks because one, I just hate playing Genshin, and that's the only game people ever want to talk about, or like COD, and I'm not a competitive shooter. But I'll fire up Alien Isolation. And right now, on Alien Isolation, which is a great port of a classic AAA game on Android, if you go into the little config file, you can get that thing cranking over 100 frames per second on a desktop quality gaming experience on an 8 Gen 3. Like, that is not something you could ever do on a Steam Deck. That is not something you can do on an older or a cheaper gaming laptop.
For sure.
That is incredible performance. On a device that has a 120 hertz refresh rate display, that is gorgeous gaming performance. It's hard to actually go back from that and go back to playing Alien Isolation at 60 or even 30 frames per second. It looks like a slideshow. So this is, I mean, like, again, we need the developers to properly support this hardware. And once we see laptops and portable consoles and Orion cores in the next generation of Snapdragon phones, that's where I think this is really going to take off. At the same time, this is going to be a huge boon for VR and XR solutions.
Yeah. I mean, it's just going to trickle down to so many different things, right? And that's why I'm excited about it.
It's got so much reach. Yeah.
So, in a nutshell, we've both experienced Snapdragon X Elite and we're very hyped and excited, especially once the laptops and 2-in-1s and whatever form factors come out. And they will very soon. Computex will be the big tipping point. And
so who do you think's actually going to ship first? Because I made a bet with TK. TK said Lenovo. I said Microsoft, and now I'm feeling like I'm wrong.
I think Microsoft is going to be there early on too. It's just that it's not their style to ship first, right?
I think Microsoft is going to announce first, but I think Lenovo and Samsung will ship before Microsoft. That's my guess now.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's switch gears to phones. We spent a bit more time on this than I wanted, but let's maybe talk about the 14, which I don't have with me right now because I'm in Vancouver, not in San Francisco. But you have it, and I have the Vivo V30 here, V30 Pro. So these two phones to me are kind of interesting because they're not they're they're not flagship. Well, okay. One is a flagship technically, but it's not the highest end of its series. It's the entry level. It's kind of like.
Can I just jump in? I would love for you to also use this too, where I've stopped talking about flagship or mid-ranger, and instead I'm just categorizing on price. So I've gone to 4 tiers.
What are the prices on these two here?
Entry level, mid-range, premium, and then ultra.
So
I'm trying to avoid flagship because the 14 is
premium. I think they're both premium phones, right?
So I think the V30 lands at the border of mid-range.
Premium and mid-range, yeah.
And the Xiaomi 14
premium
takes us right
flagship.
up to the border of ultra, premium and ultra. Great. So to me, I feel like that's a fairer way because literally Xiaomi calls their ultra an ultra.
Yeah, but
the 14 is a different piece.
I agree, but I also do feel like the build and the materials also dictate where you fit in that, not just the price. And I think this phone you're holding, the 14, which I have the green one, by the way, emerald. It looks like
really pretty.
A more muted and less marbly OnePlus 12, if you know what I imagine that. Anyway,
spot on.
But look, metal frame, glass back, it's really nice. And this, however, comparatively, is plastic, right? Like it's not. Like the back might be glass. It's kind of got this weird like oyster shell kind of finish.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I got the same one. It looks like hard oil paint. Like
the reason I'm kind of lumping them together is not because they are, there are different categories and different pricing. All the prices are kind of close. I find that the Vivo's pricing, except for India as usual, is a little on the high side for what you get. In my opinion, I would probably pick the Xiaomi 14 out of the two for the same amount of money-ish. But
yeah, when they're close, it's tough.
But camera-wise, they're both extremely interesting and they're both very, very good. And that's kind of my takeaway. Like, I feel like the Vivo V series, this is the Pro. I've always gotten the Pros. I think the last one I had the V29 and then the V27 before that.
Yeah.
I think
it's tough because they tend to put out 2 variants every
year. And then I don't know if they ever did a V28. I don't remember a V28.
No, they skipped. Okay. Yeah.
So the point I'm making is that the V29 Pro disappointed me in imaging. I don't know if it's because I got an early device and because I never got software updates on it, but oh my God, like it felt like it was saving things at JPEG low. Like, like everything was so lacking in detail. Like it was worse than the competition at the same price point. And I'm like, Vivo, come on, you can do better than that. And then they come out with this thing, which has Zeiss branding, Zeiss color science, and a decent camera system. Like, holy crap.
It's really good. This is a camera system that last year would have been on a $700 or $800 more premium kind of phone.
I mean, again,
and
that's why
each of the camera sensors got a huge shot in the arm.
I think in many ways it matches the 14, except the 14 is a Leica branded,
So it's interesting. It's like in the core. How do I want to phrase this? I'm not trying to be insulting, but in the core, what techies talk about average consumer, daily driver, good daylight kind of camera performance.
Yeah,
they're very evenly matched.
Right.
What the Xiaomi can do, this new sensor from OmniVision.
Yeah, you talked about that. I'll put a link to that video as well.
When you start pushing your phone camera into more challenging, hard contrast or dark environments or really just difficult lighting conditions, OmniVision came out of nowhere.
I mean,
and I feel like they're
that's
now
never
one of the
happened,
second
right?
place
Like
offerings.
OmniVision is always bottom of the barrel, like.
We always, it's usually the dinky little telephoto that no one cares about on some cheap phone. Or I think there was an OmniVision in an LG, but I can't remember now.
But
anyway,
you know what? There is
this
a
thing
1
is
inch.
incredible.
There's a 1 inch type OmniVision sensor in, I believe, the latest Honor Ultimate, the Magic.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
My point is, I was all like, so it's the beginning of OmniVision being relevant to us.
And directly competitive in a way that we're now finally getting to experience more internationally. Because I think these are cameras that have probably been more competitive just in regions that we haven't gotten to sample them as readily. And what OmniVision is doing in the Xiaomi 14, I'm telling you, I put it up. It's the same size image sensor as the main camera on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. It's like you've got 2 stops more light.
I know,
to work
it's
with
amazing,
dark.
and it's so good.
It's like
in
night
no
vision
light.
compared to the S24. It's shocking, and it's the littler phone. It's not the Xiaomi 14 versus the S24.
I know.
It's directly
exactly.
Xiaomi 14 versus S24 Ultra. So this is so. Sorry, I get all tongue-tied because I get all tweaky and excited about it. When you put the Vivo up against this, in good daylight, HDR performance, Leica versus Zeiss, they're very comparable.
Yeah.
If you start pushing your phone camera harder, you can see where the Vivo starts to fall apart.
100%.
And the Xiaomi just keeps going. That to me is the main, that's what you're paying for in any difference between those two. So if you're not concerned about like ultra low light or, better raw files to work from and edit, then you're not going to notice those differences between the two.
Another difference is in the telephoto, and I want to kind of bring up really quickly to give people a sense of where we're at here in specs. Both phones have triple 50 megapixel sensors, right? That's kind of the big deal here, right?
I mean, and think about it, not Apple, not Samsung.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind in the back of your head. But to give you an idea of why that OmniVision sensor in the 14 does so well, f over 1.6 versus f over 1.9. So there's like an f-stop almost to it. I don't know how many is that.
And even more, because if we're talking about the Vivo versus the Xiaomi, that
there's
ratio
a sensor size too, right?
is
the
attached to a larger sensor. So it's not just
1
the
micron
same.
versus 1.2. So
Yeah,
you're gonna
so
get
there's
that
another 10%
exactly
difference in sensor size contributing to an even larger ratio
right.
for a larger aperture. It's
The
really exciting.
the Vivo has a technically better ultra wide because it's got
Yeah.
autofocus and it's got a faster lens FOV 2.0 versus 2.2. But
Yeah.
honestly, I'm splitting hairs here. But the telephoto is where I'm a little disappointed, and I think was where was you were describing they kind of fit in. One is at the top of that premium bracket, the other one at the
Yeah.
bottom. Is that the 14, the Xiaomi has a 3.2x optical with
Yeah.
OIS, and the Vivo has a 2x, essentially more of a portrait lens without
hmm
OIS. And you notice that when you start zooming, like if you can do 4x very good quality photos with the
hmm
Vivo, but you can do 10x very good quality photos with the 14, right?
And this is interesting to see how they've shifted their focal lengths, because for the Vivo, they end up with a slightly better configuration for the ultra wide because that's where they think you're going to do macro. But for Xiaomi, they improved the close focusing distance, so you're doing your macro off of the telephoto,
That's
which
right.
I think gives you a better compressed view of the
100%. You
subject
get
that
that
you're
nice,
lining
creamy,
up on.
natural bokeh and
Oh,
everything.
it's so pretty. Yeah.
The reality is this, folks, like these two cameras are underdogs right now in the scale because they're being overshadowed by the X100 for Vivo, by
Yeah,
the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, right? Which
for
I
sure.
also have. And by the way, I will have almost an entire show dedicated to that
You
very
need to.
soon.
It's such a beefy
Oh
camera.
my God, that
It's
phone.
huge.
Like, we've always loved the Xiaomi Ultras. Like, the previous models were pretty solid. But the fact that this
Yeah,
is a global phone, you know,
it's really
and
exciting.
I don't know what they've done to this, but the magic dial was cranked up to 11 on that phone.
Yep,
Like, I
this one
really
goes
feel
to
like,
11.
look, I have the Oppo as well. I have the Find X7
Yeah.
Ultra. I took it to Antarctica for all my photos. It's an amazing phone. But
hmm
if you put them side by side, the Xiaomi just wow. Like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's just so well tuned. Anyway, we digress. But look, if you want to spend less money and you're not about like having the best thing on the block, I think the Xiaomi 14, especially if you want a small phone, that thing is the size of an
Yeah.
S23, or S24. It's a
It's
small
just like
device.
it's like the speaker grill taller than an S24.
It's
And
really
that
nice to hold and handle.
it's just that last bit. I mean, like, even because this used to be considered the medium-sized phone. I don't even we didn't used to say this was a small phone, but now with
That's
small
true.
phones properly evaporating in the market, this is a smaller phone. It is very encouraging, and it's the thing I keep pointing to North Americans is we don't know how far behind we've actually fallen in camera
For
tech
sure.
when it's just Samsung versus Apple.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what this phone is doing, the Xiaomi 14,
It's waking
directly,
us up.
I mean, yeah, but directly against like an S24 Plus, this is not competition. Samsung is not offering competition
Oh,
in
100%.
photography
This
for
is
the
this is
S24 Plus.
this is almost S24 Ultra level of performance in an S24 form factor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel that means we've had room to kind of build on this stuff for iPhones and Galaxies, and instead they know
Whatever.
they don't need to.
They
Yeah,
don't
it's
need
disappointing.
to. Right? As I keep saying, I think the best imaging devices from Chinese manufacturers, and I'm not just talking about the ultras and the pros and the top models, in general, at the flagship or premium tier, top of the premium tier level, are just rocking my socks right now. Like,
Yeah.
they are just a whole dimension better than the best iPhone and Galaxy you've ever used.
Oh yeah.
And people are like, no. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you start using it with a bit of a critical eye, and it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
Because we don't want to discount like the photographer in that. I mean,
No.
if your main shtick is like you pull your phone out of your pocket for a lazy portrait orientation photo of your kid just looking
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
no phone is going to perform really significantly better. But the second you add just that, like you said, the critical eye, just a little composition. I want a frame. I want it on this line. I want head and shoulders. I want a softer background. Like the second you start considering that, the tools that you get on Vivo, Xiaomi, Oppo, just take your mobile photography right up directly comparable against Micro Four Thirds mirrorless cameras.
And I would like to add that this is maybe the saving grace we have here in North America. If you're going to buy a phone that needs full support for our carriers and
Sure,
warranty and
for
all
sure,
that,
for sure.
the good news is that Oppo is OnePlus, and
hmm
the OnePlus 12 and the Open are finally at that level. They are
Yeah,
finally at
they're
that,
cracking that
in my
barrier.
opinion, slightly better than Samsung and iPhone level,
I agree. Yeah,
personally. Like,
yeah.
I absolutely am blown away by how they were able to like
Yeah.
Oppo-fy in that sense, because there's other ways they Oppo-fy that I'm not as
That other
excited
people
about.
don't like. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
You know,
especially this most recent update for the Open. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but they directly addressed some of my concerns
100%.
about
Yeah.
JPEG processing. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's not a radical difference, but I immediately noticed like, oh, it's doing something a little different when I hit the shutter and my daughter's bouncing all around than it was doing before. So even those little polishing updates, OnePlus has gotten a lot more aggressive about showing their work in supporting their customers. I think this is an even money. Like you can pick up a OnePlus 12, and in many ways, it's going toe to toe with iPhone
Oh,
Pros.
I think right now, for me, the only thing keeping me from having a OnePlus 12 in my pocket as my main phone, I have an Open in my pocket as well.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it's
I have
great.
I have a Pixel 8 Pro in my other pocket. The reason
Yeah,
I'm completely addicted to Pixel is all the color features, hold
exactly.
for me and screening and stuff.
I was on Android
Otherwise I'd
Faithful.
be on a 12 in a heartbeat. Like,
I was on Android Faithful, and I had just taken my SIM card out of the Pixel 8 and put it back in the OnePlus 12. I'm just bouncing all around right now. And over the course of like 2 hours on their podcast, I got 7 or 8 spam calls on my OnePlus 12 that I know I never would have gotten on my Pixel 8
yeah, and
Pro.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
It
what
was
for us,
awful.
I mean, you're a creator more. I'm a journalist. I actually get literally people who try to call me old school to pitch me stuff.
Yeah.
So trust me, like, I need this level of control. And speaking of which, I have finally put my SIM card, not my own personal, but one of my SIM cards, into this phone, the OnePlus 12R.
Yeah.
Look, the poor little R never got the love it needed from me because I've been traveling, I've
It's
been busy. It came
yeah.
out, honestly, another phone that is flying under the radar because it didn't get the attention because Big Brother came along and said, yo,
Yep.
look at me, I'm OnePlus 12. Well, OnePlus 12R, folks, is blowing my
It's
freaking mind.
punchy. Yeah.
It's pretty delicious. Look, I miss wireless charging. I need that, and it's a whole different game for me. But for people who don't need that, and for $3.99 with a lump of coal in the envelope, right? Because you can
Right.
send them pretty much anything for the $100
Anything.
discount.
Yeah.
This phone is kicking butt, like serious butt, like holy crap. And this goes back to our discussion with the Vivo and the Xiaomi, is that, the
Mhm.
Vivo is a MediaTek 8020, whereas Xiaomi is a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. You don't
Yeah.
have wireless charging on the Vivo. You have, as I said, it's plastic and not metal and glass. Like, so you are definitely losing some stuff. And honestly,
For sure.
I do feel that Xiaomi's software is better than Vivo's software. At least the Vivo software you get in
Yeah.
the global market.
Fun Touch has definitely improved, but it's not that fun.
It's not that fun. No, and it's also kind of icky to, name it that for us.
I pick up my Vivos because I love living in their camera app,
Me
but
too.
the rest of the phone experience definitely needs a little more updated.
back to the beginning here, like, I was so disappointed with the V29 Pro that
Yeah.
I had in terms of imaging. I was like, I almost, when they said, do you want the V30 Pro? I'm like, do I? Because last year it was like, I never used it. I took 3 photos and I like literally chucked it. Like,
Right.
back in my
But
drawer it goes.
But the fact that Zeiss said like, yeah, let's slap a label on it, there was
On
a lot more confidence
premium
on
phone,
the V30.
that was impressive because generally
Yeah.
the Hasselblad and the Leica,
They're only going
and
to the most
Zeisses,
expensive.
They want to be front and center. Yeah. So look, these phones are pretty damn great. And here's the good news. At least the Xiaomi 14, because it's a Snapdragon chip, I've had good luck using my SIM cards both in Canada and the
Yeah.
US without any problems. So that's
Yeah.
exciting.
I know I'm
Whereas
not
the
getting-
Vivo, I'm not getting 5G most of the time. So
a little trickier. Yeah. So MediaTek on the X100 Pro, the new modem there, I am getting better sub-6 support. Same thing with the Xiaomi. I know in my secluded suburban life now, I'm not getting UC. So like the fastest T-Mobile
you're
tier,
not.
but I am getting
Are you on
really
T-Mobile
good.
there?
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but I am getting
same
really
with me.
good
So I'm on
sub-6.
T-Mobile in the States and I'm on TELUS in Canada. Slightly different bands, which is really interesting because I get to test. They have a lot more mid-band
cool.
here in Canada. So it's
Yeah.
actually really interesting because I get like 300-400 megabits down pretty regularly.
But it's nice that we're almost to the place that we were at the end of LTE, where I know I'm getting reasonably good connectivity and not total band support for my carrier, but
I mean,
enough
you still
that
don't get 600 megahertz, for example. You know, like there's a bunch of bands you're not going to get because, you know, they're global phones. Like that's why I told you about go get a 1 + 12 or 12R because, like, and you're getting an Oppo experience. That's the beauty of it. You're getting that goodness, but you're getting something that you don't have to worry about not working. Right.
So my mom is still on a OnePlus 6T, and I think she's gonna flip it for a 12R. I think she's finally ready.
It's a big size difference, though. The 6T was a pretty small phone.
But for her, she really loved things like, for the time, like the 6T was like the fastest charging phone that we could buy
it was
then.
so good.
So
it's one of my favorites.
Things like that, when she sees like the screen got brighter, the main camera is better than the main camera on the OnePlus 6T, but then also the charging spec got quicker too. She's already got red cables all over the house because she has her 6T. So I think that's going to be what she flips her phone for finally.
And you know, my mom, I was in France after MWC because it's so convenient to go see my mom an hour flight away from Barcelona every time. And so, you know, it was her birthday. I went to spend a few days with her, and I bought her a Pixel 7a because she needed a new phone. She was on an Honor, something mid-range from Honor that was literally from 2018, like 6 years old. And, you know, it needed to happen. But I remember the first time I handed her a phone after I transferred everything over, she goes, "Oh my God, that screen." That's the first thing she said, right? I mean, like, and then you actually object. I had to pick up the old Honor and put it side by side, and I'm like, IPS, maybe 400 nits on a good day versus whatever it was, like 1200 nits of OLED goodness at 90 hertz. And she was losing her mind about it because, you know, she's older, she's losing her eyesight a little bit. So having this contrast, also dark mode for her was a revelation. She goes, she goes, "Can you do the thing that you did to your phone?" I'm like, "What do you mean, Mom?" She goes, "Your phone is all dark." I'm like, dark mode. I did that on hers. And she goes, "This is like, why isn't every phone like this? I can read now." And I'm like, "Yes, Mom, I get it.
So much better.
I'm younger than you, but I do it because I can't read either." So
I'm team dark mode all the way.
Team dark mode, 100% on everything, all the things. All right, let's switch to some news items. We have a few here. Let's just fire through them real quick. So, you know, look, there's a lot of leaks, which is kind of fun, but there is a real phone that came out this week. It's official now that we saw at MWC. We took photos of, we handled the ZTE Nubia Flip 5G is coming out to the US. It'll be fully supported bandwise for $499. It's the cheapest folding phone, flip phone in the world right now. Well, not in the world, but in the North American market. I'm excited just because it's not for me. I mean, I like the flips and I'd go for the high end, but you know, compare this to a Moto Razr Non-Plus. It looks way more exciting. Of course, the Moto software is going to be way better. So, you know, you get some, you take some, you leave some.
I like ZTE's design aesthetic that makes this like a little pocket smartwatch.
It looks cool. Well, the display is actually a smartwatch display. Like if you look at the specs, right, you're like, yeah, you part bin that thing.
So I went through that phase in high school where I had a pocket watch for a month and everyone made fun of me. This is like revisiting that. Like I kind of love that idea of giving me another option for at a glance, just minute pieces of information to decide whether or not I want to interrupt my day and really open up the phone to use it. I think your main point really will stand. ZTE, you know you're buying kind of a baked appliance. Like it's not gonna change a whole lot.
Not gonna get a lot of software updates. It's like
you're
the Red
not
Magic
gonna get
phones.
a lot of that kind of support. I think my Axon, it was Axon. It's the one with the HN1. Like it just got Android 13. And that was their most expensive phone of 2 years ago.
Wow.
I don't have a lot of expectations on that. So if you go into it knowing this is the state that it's going to be in, and I want this cute little clamshell, and you're going for the hardware, I think this is going to be a great competitor, especially in the enthusiast space here for North America.
Yeah, and I think, look, it has a pretty solid spec sheet that's competitive for the price. And again, I would be surprised if we start seeing this as a prepaid phone. Like, wouldn't it be cool? Because it's officially supported. If like Cricket, or does Cricket still exist? If
but for low cost carriers, I mean, it's nice to step up and kind of deliver something that can still be a talking
because I think
point,
even if
something
you
fashionable.
Even if by full price, $499 is a lot more manageable than buying an iPhone for $1,000. Because the other thing is the iPhone, right? I mean, if you're already on an iPhone, you're not going to look at this, but let's say buying a Samsung Galaxy for $1,000, because the reality is, as soon as you just look at one of those more high-end phones, you immediately get price bloat, right? Because you're like, well, I'm going to buy the iPhone for like the 15 base model, and you're like, I need more storage, $100.
Yep.
I need a case, $20. I need this, and then the next thing you know, like I did this with my niece. I bought her an iPhone 15, for Christmas, and she was super excited. And I love her dearly. She needed a phone. Her iPhone was like 5 years old or something, and I was like, you can get whatever accessories you want. We walked out of that store with $1,000 something plus dollars, and I'm like,
yeah, that's a bit much.
Thought this phone was $799 or something. What happened here? Well, you have taxes, and we did trade in her old phone, so we did get something like $100 back. But the point is, look, it's easy to get carried away, and I think the nice thing about this is $499. You throw a case on it, like $20. You're now with tax at $550, and I think that's probably more manageable for a lot of people. And you have something super cool that nobody else has.
So, and it brings this it's like the thing I love about talking Moto Razr, like you were saying, those are not phones for me, but I can completely appreciate someone who wants to revisit that kind of clamshell folding flip phone. It is a talking point. There are a couple parents that are starting to show up with Galaxy Z flips, and they love talking. They show it off. It's like, hey, this is something a little unique. It's a little different. And this helps bring that conversation to something a bit more accessible. And I think we're finally at the place where we're not going to suffer the compromises of using a more mainstream mid-ranger component set. I mean, think about how expensive the first Moto Razr was for having, I think it was a Snapdragon 765, something like that.
Yeah, that's correct.
I want to say it was, but one of the mid-rangers. And of course it got savaged because it was like, oh, it's over $1,000 and it's less performance, blah, 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 blah. Well, now we can better sort of combine these aesthetics with a more reasonable price point. Yeah, well, and it makes more sense for consumers that they're not paying a whole lot for something that the trick is that it bends, right? It's like they're paying a reasonable amount for a flip phone that performs like it should as a daily driver, good battery life communicator device. And now I think we're going to have, that's going to be a new arms race for flips, is having some kind of, again, more premium offering, like a Samsung Z Flip is going to occupy that space. And now we're going to have 2 tiers of Moto and a number of other competitors that are also looking at how do we undercut Moto.
The whole Ulefone, Blackview, Ukitel, and Doogee are all coming. We saw them all at MWC.
They're definitely coming.
And they're not coming to the US, so they're not even on the table, in my opinion, because they're already pretty janky as brands. Like, no offense, I kind of love a janky phone, right?
For sure.
Like,
I just did the Unihertz tank.
We kind of live by the jank. That's kind of like our thing. Right? Like, we love the experimentation, but at the same time, like, realistically, this is the only thing that will work in the US and will be supported. So moving on, I just want to quickly touch on this weird new series of phones from Realme. Like, I cannot place them in their lineup. Like, what is this about? They have a new line of, like, Realme does not need new phones. Like, Realme lineup is so complicated already. And they're not a huge brand. So why proliferate? Anyway, this is called the Realme P1 and P1 Pro. And it's a leak. They look a lot like they look like the 12 series to me. I've got the 12 Plus, I've got the 12 Pro Plus, which I'm already confused about half the time when I try to pick up one, I pick up the other. Because the only way I can tell them apart is one has a flat screen, the other one doesn't. Like, I'm like, Realme, stop it now. You're confusing me.
But I also think that's been a part of like the Realme and also on the Xiaomi side of the Pocos.
Oh, the Redmi and the Poco side, yeah.
And all that too. It's
Let's
like
make identical phones and brand them differently.
and we're talking about different regions getting this configuration,
Understood.
but it's the same as that. And we're talking about a $10 price window separation between MSRPs. And I get what they're doing. So you come out with something new, you make a big splash, you get the media coverage of it for that moment. You sell out the batch of phones you were going to make, and then you move on to the next phone in that series. And that's why we get 2 generations of V series Vivos in the same year. This is the same thing here.
The worst offender, the Oppo Reno series.
Oh,
3
yeah,
a year.
Exactly. 3 a year, right. There's no way to conceptualize that for an audience.
I stopped getting them because I actually
to.
managed to keep up to the 8. And after that, I was like, that's it,
you
I'm
did
done.
good work there.
I did everything from the original Reno to the 8. Only the Pro models, but still, like, that was a lot of PR work. Like I was on the PR email train. Like, send me this. We just sent you the other one. I know, but you made another one, so please send it to me. It was hilarious. Anyway.
So it's interesting to see these leak out, and I get the specs and I get the price point that they're aiming for, because they're aiming for a very aggressive.
And also
price
they're aiming
point,
for performance. That's what the P stands for. So what I think they're doing here is they're making very affordable phones from the parts bin, from the BBK parts bin. We love that parts bin. It's a good parts bin. It's like the Xiaomi parts bin. There's very little in there that sucks. So it's going to be okay, I think. And more importantly, it's going to be a more affordable, performance-oriented device. So those people who want to play games and stuff can have a stylish, very affordable phone with decent cameras and really good performance. But it's kind of weird to me because they look so similar to the 12 series, right?
Oh, but totally. And again, it's like we know that they're borrowing a few tips and tricks. I'll be very curious to see like where the Dimensity flavor fits against the Snapdragon flavor.
Yeah, and also 6 Gen 1 is the rumor for the better one. And I'm like, that chip is... I don't know anything about that chip.
But tell me, like, this year's been a little topsy-turvy where you look at something like the Vivo X100, and that Dimensity 9300 is shockingly powerful.
It's so good.
Anything CPU bound, it is murking the 8 Gen 3.
100%.
If you do GPU stuff, Snapdragon has the better, I think, GPU performance. But it's like, if you give me an X100 Pro Plus with a Snapdragon chip, I don't know that it's an upgrade. It's actually kind of a downgrade in a lot of parts over the regular X100 Pro. And I think the same thing could end up happening here.
Yeah.
The Realme side of this, the Snapdragon might be more expensive, but it might not be the better performer once we really kind of get these things in hand and start playing with them.
It will probably be the more fancy phone with the curved display and the better cameras, but you're right.
Yeah, it's tricky until we get to play with them.
It's interesting because I feel like last week we talked about the Moto Edge 50 Pro that finally launched in parts of the world, I think India. And honestly, I'm kind of stoked about this leak because, well, the Edge is a thing here in the US. And on April 16th, we're going to find out the other 2 members of the Edge, the Edge 50 Fusion at the lower end, the Pro being in the middle, and the Edge 50 Ultra, which is going to be at the higher end. And, every time we see the Edge numbered series, it's a predictor of what our Edge and Edge Plus, if we get one or the other or both, is going to look like in our market. And we're about at that time of year where Moto should be sending invites to fly us out to their headquarters.
Right?
In Chicago and show us some tasty morsels of Edge phones. So I'm actually excited. Look, last year, finally, the Moto Edge Plus was flagship worthy to me. The cameras were definitely not as good as the best, but they were competitive enough. And then the one that really blew my mind, and it's like the 12R, it flew under the radar because we were all busy with like the October death knell of launches was the Edge Non Plus 2023. It
was really solid.
That phone, once I started using it, I was like, oh my God, why didn't anybody tell me how cool this phone was going to be? Now, the price was too high, but now you can buy that phone for $349. So
it's nuts.
This Edge stuff, that's coming. If that Ultra that's leaked in this, I'll
Mhm.
put a link in the show note, guys. If that Edge 50 Ultra comes as the Edge or Edge Plus in the US, holy crap ball. It's going to have a periscope telephoto, first Moto to have that. It's going to have, at least for the US, it's going to have Snapdragon 8S Gen 3, also first US phone with that if it does keep that. And that pleather back, wireless charging, all that
Yeah.
good stuff. Like,
And one of the only other phones in North America that's giving OnePlus a run for fast cable charging.
that's the
They
other
actually
thing,
do
right?
support a 67-watt charger.
So I'm
It
excited.
could be real good.
I could be.
I still point to Moto as kind of the last major competitive option against Samsung for someone who wants a more work and productivity focused device.
100%.
And for Motorola still, I think not offering the same promise of longevity and support. I genuinely prefer.
They're getting better.
They're getting better, but obviously, like Samsung is trying to catch up to Google. I think
Right.
Moto is trying to catch up to Samsung last year. But I still point to every Samsung fan who likes things like DeX and Good Lock. The only reason DeX and Good Lock got better over the last couple of years was because Moto Ready 4 leapfrogged DeX. Ready 4 is
Yep.
incredible. So if you like those improvements to your Samsung, you owe Motorola a thank you.
Exactly.
So it's the last option that we have that's really kind of driving that kind of feature support and that kind of feature upgrade in North America. And like you were saying too, you can be pretty confident that within a couple months of launch, I remember I got my Edge Plus 2022 for $399. That was a
Yeah, it's gonna go
512
down in
gig
price
storage
drastically.
phone, 8 Gen 1, ready for stylus support. That thing was a monster phone, and I got it for less than half price.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. All right. The next item is the entire internet has lost its mind about the Pixel 8a and its massive chin / bottom bezel.
Are you bothered by
I
this?
feel like this is the angle of the photo more than anything. And the fact that it has rounded corners accentuates it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's going to be terrible in person.
I don't. And it's an A series. I really just don't get this hyper fixation on trying to pick apart something on a Pixel. Like, we're not talking a Pixel 9 Pro.
Yeah,
we're talking
the
the 8A.
7A has a pretty big bezel all around and slightly bigger bezel on the bottom. This is just rounding the corners and doing the same thing.
And do you know
think it's
who's
just the
not
angle of
bothered
the
at all?
photo.
I think the angle is definitely contributing to it, but also, do you know who's not bothered about the slightly
average
larger
person?
bezel?
Yeah.
The person who owns a Pixel 7a and loves their phone. Like,
Correct.
They don't care. And if it means...
And I do have to say that there is some kind of uncanny valley where you get to a chin that's too much. Most of the Moto Gs are like that.
No, I think that's fair.
Like, you know what remember the Nokias? The HMD branded ones?
Yeah.
Like, you want a 1 centimeter bezel at the bottom of your phone? We have that for you with a Nokia logo in it for good measure.
For sure. I was going to say, it reminds me of like they still had all the space for a home button.
I'm like, hey guys, have you looked at the year? Like,
But even for that, if it's targeted as a less expensive device, I might get a little aesthetic
I agree
about an asymmetrical
I just think it
bezel.
was funny. That's why I had to mention it.
Looks like a Pixel A series. I can't care. I just can't be bothered
it's gonna be,
by...
Look, this phone is going to be really good. There's no way a Pixel A is not going to be good.
Yeah.
It might be very iterative, but it'll be good.
Oh, it definitely will be. But again, it's going to be iterative into the experiences we've already had with the Pixel 8.
Like, right? I would argue that right now, go buy a Pixel 6a for $329 because it's still fantastic.
I still have a few family members that will not part with the battery life on the Pixel 5. Pixel 5a.
There you go. Yeah,
the 5a is just like, that was so in the hands of my aunt, the Pixel 5a is a 3-day off the charger phone.
Wow.
Because she just needs a very basic communicator.
Snapdragon
the
765G, right? So that thing, that chip
1,
is super optimized. Yeah. It's super optimized too, their software on that. They had so many generations of that, right?
I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, and if you really care about the aesthetic and the design of your phone, I can understand some criticisms, but if we're talking target market, target price points, feature sets, and the expectations of the consumers, I think the 8A is spot on. I
I
think
agree.
it's exactly what it needs to be.
Absolutely. Related to that, Google launched its updated Find My Device feature. And this is
Hmm.
more of a PSA. If you have a Pixel 8 or 8 Pro, folks, you will be able to find it even if the power is out or the battery is dead.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
So
So
this is probably, I feel like, one of the biggest. Again, it's not getting the attention that it deserves. Google announced they were going to refresh their Find My network at last year's I/O. And
correct.
Apple has held the market hostage for almost an entire year as we waited for them to finally figure out how to update the iPhone and give iPhone consumers better location tracker security. I
Yep.
need people to understand this was never an issue with Google, and Google solved many of the problems that Apple couldn't. And now they finally released, after a DOJ lawsuit, they finally released the market and we can have competition again. Have you updated the app? Have you seen the changes in the Find
I
My
have
app?
not looked yet. I'm sure that
Okay.
my app got updated in the
It's
background
really cool.
because
We now have passive headphone tracking, so it will remember your location where you were last connected to your headphones.
so I found that out when I paired my XM5s to my Pixel 8 Pro recently. I somehow because I switched to my 8 Pro like a couple of months back, and I
Yeah.
primarily use my XM4s when I travel, but I also have a pair of XM5s that I use at home sometimes.
Mhm.
And I was like, wait, it's asking me to track my head. Wow, cool. So I think I have the
Yeah.
new app because this feature is new, right?
It's really handy. Like you mentioned, we're also getting that updated. You can find your phone even when it's off. There's a low power Bluetooth connectivity that now can operate independently of the phone's main power. And I just got confirmation from the folks at Pebblebee, and they make little AirTag like trackers.
That's right.
That their new trackers are going to be both Google and Apple Find My
Nice.
compatible, not at the same time, but
Right.
when
You
you
have to
can buy
pick
one
one.
tracker, and when you sign it in, you don't have to worry, is this a tracker that's compatible only with Google phones or only with iPhones? It will work on either network, just not both at the same time. So this is what we've been needing for the last year that Apple has not let us have, because Apple created a privacy and security nightmare with AirTags. And it seems now we've finally gotten the Bluetooth SIG involved to fix some of this nonsense.
Look, this is a perfect example of a few lawsuits fixing a few things and the
Mhm.
entire tech community collaborating finally.
The system
Yes.
works.
It's like getting USB-C on the iPhone. A little bit of crankiness from the European Union, and
Hey.
here we go. Like, we are
Oh, that's
saved
good.
from lightning at last. Moving on to Apple, actually, the last thing I want to mention really quick. Again, it's really interesting because it's again the same thing. Regulatory people are yelling, and Apple's doing something, which is, I mean, maybe if it has to be that way, we can beat them with a stick. It's fine.
Yes.
The emulators for retro games are going to possibly, looks like, be allowed to exist in the App Store. So those of you out there with Nintendo ROMs, I know you don't have them legally or anything. You would never do that.
course.
But if you
Perish the
had to
thought.
have them, and if you were to use them, you now won't be dinged by Apple.
Yeah. Well, and I hope this also opens up some of the support. One of the cool trends that we saw on Android for a while, but it sort of scaled back, were developers and game distributors. That's the word I was looking for. Distributors who would do things like, you can buy almost every Neo Geo game in the Google Play Store.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, it's just the little Neo Geo emulator attached to the ROM for like $4 or $5, depending on the game.
Exactly.
And I'm hoping this starts to open up some of that legacy support for both Android and iPhone users. Like we were saying
agree.
earlier, if you're a classic gamer, if you like old school 8 to 16-bit gaming, well, your phone is stupid powerful. Like, there's no reason why you can't clip on a controller and have that Game Boy or Sega Game Gear
your
experience.
Nest thermostat can run those games, basically.
I know.
Your Pebble
Super
will run
Mario
those
on.
games. So,
I bet Doom runs great on a Nest thermostat.
I mean, Doom runs on pretty much anything at this point.
I know.
So
Did you see Doom on a digital pregnancy test?
I saw, and I also saw Doom running on a lawnmower, one of those smart lawnmowers on the little display at the top. Yeah.
So
Look,
when
everywhere.
Apple makes a move like this, when Apple makes a move like this, I'm hoping some
This is
other like a Sega. I don't want Super Mario running game or Super Mario Kart for Android. I want Mario Kart. I want the actual game.
You
And so
want
I'm
the
hoping that
original.
developers will say, like, okay, we've got this old catalog of games. People are emulating them, and we're not getting any money off of that. So
Let's
why
put
don't
them out
we
there. Yeah.
bundle them? And now people will have a new storefront that
And
Apple
now
isn't stomping on.
it's possible. So this
And
is a great way to end the show.
want it so
on a
bad.
positive note.
So good.
Yes. Oh, this is great. JC, will you tell folks where they can find you on the internet? Your various social media handles, where you are. I know you're on YouTube
Absolutely.
and stuff, what else you do, etc.
So I'm Some Gadget Guy basically everywhere. My main home site, somegadgetguy.com, where a lot of my videos and editorials will go. I am Some Gadget Guy across the socials, but I almost missed our conversation because I'm not spending a lot of time on Twitter or Facebook these days. I am spending a bit more time over on Mastodon, a little on Threads. I'm sharing photos back on Flickr to go old school, just because
cool.
it's a lovely photo sharing site that only cares about sharing photos, not
I
short
agree.
videos.
What
And then
a
also,
concept, right?
Yeah, funny that. I really love it. And then also the Patreon. We're both Patreon community people, where I'm sure your audience and my audience, like,
There's
the
some
support
overlap,
that we
I'm
get
sure.
from those
Yep,
folks is
yep.
incredible. So patreon.com/somegadgetguy. And that's kind of the whole rundown right now.
That's right. So folks, I will link to a bunch of the YouTube videos that JC made about the Snapdragon stuff and the V30 Pro and the Xiaomi 14. So check that out. And you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl, TNKGRL, like the comic book character. Just drop all the vowels. That's my social media handle everywhere, on Twitter, on Threads, on Instagram, on Blue Sky. So find me there, and tell me what your thoughts are. Tell me and JC what you think of this show, any comments, etc. And then you remember, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the major platforms, so please do that. And, if your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that as well. There's a YouTube channel for this. It's not very super active, but once a month or so, I'll post some kind of unboxing or a review. So check it out, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. You know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment, all that good stuff. I'll see you there. If you want to talk about the podcast, there, it's totally all right as well. And finally, there's a Patreon. I mentioned it a few times. We've shown some phones around. We have very little going on right now on the Patreon, but it's actually pretty good. I simplified things. I dropped the price down to $5 a month now for the video version. So you can support me for less than $5 a month. You don't really get any perks, but for $5, you get a video version of this podcast. You get it a day in advance usually, and you get sometimes some additional content when we run over time, or some major bloopers, or some fun stuff happens. It's always fun when FedEx rings the doorbell in the middle of the podcast and a new phone arrives, right?
I know that
So,
feel.
yeah. So check out my Patreon and support me if you can. Patreon.com/Tankgirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. And if you don't want to use Patreon, there's a link in show note to my blog, tankgirl.com. And there you'll find a PayPal button you can click through. You can buy me a coffee for $5 or whatever you want to do if you want to support me that way. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. You know I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And JC, I want to thank you for being my guest again this week. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love getting to catch up, and we've always been simpatico on a lot of our tech crankiness, so it's always a fun conversation.
I will definitely have you on the show at some point in the future. And folks, stay tuned. We'll have another show next week, as you know. So until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.